Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Profit First is powerful, and it can change your life destiny. My clients constantly tell me they can't imagine that they would ever have this much cash in their business. It helps them to make better choices, to grow, and to enjoy life. Today, we have on John Patrick Morgan to share how Profit First has done just that for him. John is a philosopher and champion for being. He leads a team of creating champions who teach, coach, and guide thousands of entrepreneurs and artists in being more free, loving, and powerful. By learning and embodying the creating perspective, their clients achieve a union of outcomes in spiritual growth, material success, and social impact. Post his formal studies in physics and mathematics, John Patrick built multiple small businesses, including one from a laptop and a backpack, before the term digital nomad existed. Developed real estate, traveled the world for years on end, coached human rights leaders, recorded albums and toured with his band, created a kids' library in Cambodia, learned to scuba dive and pilot gliders, published writing and photography, competed as a black belt in triathlete, trained with Buddhist monks in India, cycled toured for months, and many other adventures. In recent years, his adventures have turned inward as his family came to be. He and his wife now reside with their 2 young boys in the countryside at 4,000 feet up on a mountain in Maui because of Profit First. The foundation of John Patrick Morgan's role as a philosopher, teacher, and guide is his being a real-world practitioner. He walks his talk, lives what he teaches, and has a genuine and powerful commitment to creating everybody. Let's meet John. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, John Patrick Morgan. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, you are most welcome. I enjoyed our last conversation and said we got to have another.
Cool.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah. I have a company called Creating Company, and I help people mostly entrepreneurs, sole proprietors. I help them to create more of the material success that they want through really a spiritual growth, through an inner development, through a new experience of being in the world that's more peaceful, more joyful, more fulfilling, to kind of turn the whole process around. Like, don't create success out there so that you can be happy. Figure out how to actually have happiness be your status quo. And then through that, you profit materially, relationships. So it looks like coaching. It looks like training. I have a small team. We run workshops. We do online. Most of the stuff's online these days. One-to-one support, group support. So, and I've been doing this work about 12 years now. Prior to that, I had a web media company that I built from a backpack while traveling the world. I was like living nomadically. I had a team of developers in India and Ukraine. I had clients, mostly nonprofits and across the US and the UK. And then prior to that, I had a real estate business in my 20s. The market was just growing. I think you could trip over yourself and sell a house back then. This is like 2002, 2003, during the big boom. And then I got into developing and flipping houses and did a bunch of that. And prior to that, I was studying physics and math at university, grew up in New England, the United States, small suburban town, and lovely childhood. But yeah, and this will probably come out in the show. I know in another conversation it did. I was really blessed to have a father that I watched go from, a job for the city as a cop to, side businesses, side hustles, to retiring early and becoming quite successful in the real estate industry. So really understanding entrepreneurship from a young age, but also that transition into it as well, I think was helpful for me. That's why I help a lot of people become entrepreneurs these days as well, because I get the shift in mindset that requires.
It is. It's a very different mindset to be an employee versus being an entrepreneur. And they say, most entrepreneurs leave a 40-hour job to work twice as much.
Yeah,
to do that. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are ways to do this that are much easier. So you had all this entrepreneurial journey, many businesses, but you did still have struggles with profit there for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, struggles with profit is the right way of saying it. So when I read Profit First, what stood out for me is that, okay, there are people who struggle with profit, but they also struggle with just like even paying themselves at all. And so the thing that I didn't struggle with, I'll say that first, is that I didn't struggle with taking money from the business because I was a service provider, and I was the business. It wasn't like I was putting all my money back into the company, which would have actually helped me to grow and scale and create more revenue. I know that now in hindsight. When I was younger, it was just like I just took all the money for myself, but I operated my own personal finances the same exact way that I operated the business. And so I then spent all the money on myself. And so there was no accumulation. And part of that was just, that's my orientation, like seize the day, live for the moment. When I saw, and now in hindsight, I know that this was a belief. I saw like holding on to money as really too conservative for my taste, and it wasn't really what I wanted. It wasn't true for me, but I didn't have the nuances and distinctions I have now, especially after reading Michalowicz's book. So yeah, I was not accumulating, be it in the business or personally, anything. Made millions of dollars and had pretty much nothing, until now I'm in my early 40s, until my 40s. So it was an awesome wake up call to discover that you can have it all. to be really straightforward, you can make a lot of money and you can accumulate, and that doesn't have to mean you have to miss out on stuff.
So what was it that changed once you read the book?
I think, first of all, it made it simple. I think I'd of course heard of the idea, like conceptually, of like, tithing and taking a percentage up front instead of like trying to like save like as a line on your expenses. But there's something about reading Mike's book, his energy, and I especially love the audio book because I just being read by the author kind of really pulls me in. Just the energy and the joy and the possibility that came from distributing money in this way. I think the idea of tithing, that word is usually like give money away first. And that was harder for me to get into from a place of like not even saving money. So I think profiting first was just my work is largely in helping people to conceptualize things in ways that create an experience for them that have them be more productive. And so I think the conceptualization of profiting first kind of was a way for me to actually get into it, like be drawn to it, because it was still for me, I don't know, like it turned me on. I got inspired by the possibility that I could, be getting chunks of money every quarter that I could use for whatever I wanted. It was never inspiring for me to have a cushion of cash like that. I mean, I liked the idea, but it never mattered enough to me to motivate me to actually do it. Like, because security had never been a driving factor for me. I mean, I think that's going to be the case for most entrepreneurs. We are out there in the world creating something from nothing because we don't anchor in security. It's not our highest value. Our values are freedom and creation. And so if the only reason to save cash is to create security, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of secure from the inside out. This isn't my orientation in the world. And so it gave me a new reason to accumulate cash that wasn't really about security. And that I didn't know that it still would provide security for me, that I didn't know that I unconsciously needed and wanted, and that would actually change the game for me. We can get into that, but like, at least coming into it, that wasn't something that I was inspired by before. So profiting was more inspiring, I think.
Profit is very inspiring.
Yeah.
So let's dig into it. What changed and how have things changed for you?
Yeah. Well, as you know, I really I was in a stage of evolution in my business and really delegating more. And I liked the idea of finding somebody that was a bookkeeper or something in the YNAB realm, not in the YNAB realm, in the Profit First realm. And so that's what led me to look for a bookkeeper. And then I stumbled into the YNAB, you need a budget world. And I don't remember exactly how I got there, but then I found Amber. I was looking for a bookkeeper, and I think I talked to a couple, but then somehow I found my way to Amber Duggar, and she does Profit for Joy, Profit for Keeps is her program. And she basically teaches you how to use the Profit First method. She works with Mike as well, and how to use it in this software called YNAB. And I'd already went out and set up all my bank accounts. And then I met Amber, and she's like, well, you don't really need to do that. You can actually do virtual accounts through the software. I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, I hired her. Instead of hiring a bookkeeper that just did the system, I was like, you know what, let me get into this and learn it. And so I hired her, and I did her course, which was fantastic. But the real thing that I really wanted to do is to understand how she relates to this stuff. Like, I wanted to get inside. If I could have hired Mike at that point, maybe I would have, but like, Amber was more within my reach financially at that point. And so I wanted to get inside the head and the mind of somebody who lives and breathes this Profit First method, because it was like, because when I opened up budget software, I just wanted to throw up. That wasn't joyful. I want to get away from this thing, right? Like, and so I wanted to have a new experience of it and actually look forward to it and enjoy it. And that's what working with her did. And I think working with anybody that loves the system, if you can really get a sense of how they relate to it that has them love it, and you can model a lot from that. That's how I got into it. Yeah.
And I reached out to Amber because of you, and we'll have her on the show. So
awesome.
She'll be another guest and share with all of you what she does. So what's been the outcome of implementing Profit First for you?
Yeah. And the first outcome is just the fact that there's quarterly profit distributions, which is just different. I mean, the thing is, like, the rate at which money comes to you, it kind of matters in how you relate to spending it. Like, the money that you bring in every month. Well, first of all, let me back way up, because I had already handled this before Profit First, but like, for most of my earlier businesses, I was just commingling funds. I was taking money as and when I needed it, and it's like, I was just doing draws on the business account to personal. Yeah, I had separate bank accounts, but it didn't really matter because I was just taking money when I needed it. And that's why my personal expenses were going along for the ride of my business income. And it was just like, if we had good months in the business, we'd go out to eat. And if we didn't, then we would cancel Netflix, So, but then there was a point at which I was like, all right, I need to stabilize at least the personal by saying that there's a fixed money that I'm going to bring in every month. And so that was important. But I still had the ups and downs. And so there were still tight months and not. And so the thing that the Profit First method did is it helped me to stabilize the business. And so that we stopped having this kind of feast and famine experience. And I shared this with Amber recently in an interview I did with her, is like, one of the biggest things was the realization that I had been unconsciously avoiding accumulating cash, because part of me believed that if I didn't need it, I wouldn't be motivated to go out there and create it. And not once I started to accumulate cash and I still was motivated to go out and create it, I was like, oh, I was going out and creating because I just love to create. I mean, I also knew that was true, but I didn't realize that there was a part of me that was afraid, because actually I kept going and kept creating more and more. But then what also shifted is that and these are all things that I didn't see coming, but my sense of what was possible got greater. Because whilst I'm not like orienting around security as my primary value, I am human, and there's an at least unconscious desire and need for some sense of security. And as the numbers in the bank started ticking up and adding zeros to them, I'd wake up in the morning knowing that like I could try something even crazier. I could set a goal that's 10x my goals and just go for it. And worst case scenario, we burn through 6 months of cash and we have less runway, but like the ship doesn't sink. I can just start over again. And so it gave my threshold, my tolerance for risk went up. The threshold for what we could do went up, and it allowed me to expand the business. And I didn't even have vision for where our business is or is going now back then. And I didn't realize that I didn't have that vision because unconsciously I didn't feel safe enough to think that big. And so that's been one of the coolest things to just realize, is that like the amount of resources that I have are actually unconsciously contributing or influencing my capacity to even dream for how big we can go. And so now I like the accumulation of cash for the power to dream that it gives me, for how big it allows me to think.
Growth needs cash flow.
Yeah.
And having it up front makes it a lot easier to be able to fund growth and to be able to make those changes. It's also allowed you to make a lifestyle change, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think about this until, what's funny, November 8th, it is today. November 10th last year, my wife and I decided that we wanted to move to Hawaii. We were living in Santa Monica at the time, and we'd been to some of the islands, but not Maui. And our research showed that Maui would probably be the best island for us, but we hadn't even been here yet. And I started speaking in my daily journaling, and I speak aloud in the mornings, like who I am and what I'm creating. And we started speaking that we were going to move to Hawaii, like literally a year ago and 2 days from now. And we're in Hawaii now. Came to Maui in January. We moved here in July. We're renting in a beautiful house on Haleakala. It's the large volcano here with an amazing view. I don't know if you'll publish the video of this or not, but I'm going to point the camera just in case. At least you can see it right now. That's the West Maui Mountains. Yeah. And in 8 days, we closed on a house, a $2 million house. It's actually 3 houses, a small farm here in Maui. And that is way beyond like where I could have afforded a few years ago. The fact that I've been accumulating cash and, which has had me make more money and means that I could get approved for conventional financing at a higher number. It's a dream. And it's a dream that I didn't even have. I wouldn't have had if I hadn't engaged the Prophet first, because I wouldn't have thought that big. I wouldn't even thought it possible, never mind been able to achieve it. So, I mean, I'm super grateful for Mike. I look forward to getting to meet him one day and say thank you, but to this whole methodology and the community around it, because it's changed our world. It's changed our life for sure.
And that is awesome. That's what I always love, to bring these success stories so that people can hear what the power of Profit First is over time. And I've always lived with this methodology in my personal life. And so it has allowed me to achieve those things as well, which is absolutely phenomenal.
You've always lived this methodology, you said?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I started doing it at 21.
So you found Mike's book and you're like, already knew about it?
That was one of the reasons I partnered with Mike. I was like, I already do this. It's the core way I think. Do I want to create my own book and my own marketing and my own stuff, which I don't like doing?
Right.
Or do I just want to focus on the part that I love, which is helping people with their numbers and their finances and creating the systems? And I was like, I want to go do that. Let Mike go out and do all the Profit First talks and promotions and hand me a system that's easy for me to implement. Give me a back office that when I have a question or a concern, I can pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Yeah. And that's what it's done. So it was a perfect partnership. And the funny thing is, Mike doesn't actually teach people how to do this, in the sense like you couldn't call him up and hire him.
Right.
He's got people like me that do that. So he would have put you off on one of his different people.
And one of his peeps, yeah. Awesome.
Which is what Amber is, I think, right? So you would have ended up.
I think nowadays, yeah. I mean, I worked with her before. Maybe she was doing that, but more, I just remembered like the house that I'm buying, more specifically, like I've had the income for a while that could probably get a mortgage like that approved. But I only recently I've had the enough money to put down. And that is that's the accumulation, right? So it's like, I bet there's a lot of people out there, entrepreneurs who have a decent income, but they're probably running their personal finances, maybe similar to they're running their business finances. And there's just not an accumulation. So even though they might have the debt to income ratio, or they could actually, get something that they want to borrow money to buy a house, for example, they don't have the cash in the bank. And if it feels like to accumulate that cash would be to undermine something that I value, the growth, then I just don't think it's true anymore. There's a balance point, right? Like if you're too conservative, then, you're going to get in the way of growth as well. But, it's such, starting with 5% profit off the top. I mean, it's like, it's not that big of a sliver, but it starts to add up. The cool thing is also like I had some business debt that we were paying down. And then once that was gone, that's like, wow, then these big chunks of cash are just coming my way to do things with as well. And the other thing too is the tax savings. I mean, it was always like, it's such a when you're not saving for taxes, it creates a certain attitude towards taxes, right? It's like, I don't want to pay taxes. And I'm not saying it's like, now it's like, oh yeah, let's pay as much as we can. No, that's not it. But it's like, you don't realize that how much of your resistance to taxes is actually a function of you not preparing for it in advance. And that when you actually are putting money aside for it, that like come tax time, yeah, you're still going to be strategic, but it's going to cost you so much less energy, psychologically, emotionally, because you're not actually feeling a higher tax bill as a problem I have to go and solve. It's nice to have all the money to pay the taxes and to still play the game well and to not have to spend all of it on the tax bill, but to know that you've got it. And I actually love paying my taxes in one big chunk just from this tax savings category. It's like, no problem, got it. But I've renamed taxes in all my accounting software as common good. That's another example of like creating a meaning around that line that has me feel better about it, because then I'm more empowered. But that's a bit of an aside.
You could just call it the success tax.
That's cool. That's a good one too. Tax still feels like a sting, but yeah. Yeah. But I get you.
I have to think of another word for that, right?
Common good, man. It's a contribution. Because it is, right? Like, the roads I drive on, the military that supposedly protects me and all these kinds of things.
So
pay for them.
Let's chat a little bit about what you do. Entrepreneurs have a lot on their mind. They've got fears, they've got dreams and hopes, and yet they've got a lot of struggles in between. And I think what you do is you help people, right, to get more clarity, to break through a lot of these types of things. Can you share a little bit about what it is that you do and how you help?
Yeah. Yeah, I help people to see how everything they experience in their life, everything they have is created by them. And it's a perspective. It's not the truth, but it's a perspective that gives a person a lot of power. It can be a little bit overwhelming at first, and that's why we also really help people to be at peace and to not blame and beat themselves up, because that's not it. But the central question in our work is, how are you creating this? And if you're asking yourself, how am I creating this? No matter what it is, because it helps you to see your role in that creation. And so if a person's stressed because their sales team's not performing, how am I creating this? I'll give you an example. There was a guy on my team that was having some challenges, and I was just sitting with my wife at dinner the other night. I said, how often do I come out here and say to you, man, he's just kicking ass? She's like, not that much lately. And I was like, yeah, that's why he's not performing, is because I am coming out here and telling my wife about where he's not performing, instead of coming out here and telling my wife about where he is performing. I'm not seeing the great in him. I'm seeing where he's challenged. So that's like, it's not like he has nothing to do with it, but I'm obsessively looking for my role in the creation of everything that I'm experiencing that's happening around me. So if my team's not performing, how am I creating that? Who am I being? What am I missing? What am I not bringing to the table? What am I accommodating or not, or letting happen? And it's a question that the more you ask it and the more you look through that lens, the more of your agency you find. And I love using that question first to help entrepreneurs liberate themselves from stress, from worry, from fear, right? So let's start, like, how am I creating this stress? Starting to become aware of the thinking that you're generating. It's like, I keep having that thought. No, you're not having a thought. You're thinking a thought. And so it actually, where a person's agency lives and where they're experiencing their world is evidenced in their language and how they speak. And so being in conversation with a person, I just listen, and I listen to how they're talking about their world, and I help them to see how they're speaking of the world as something that's happening to them. And if they'll just look at that same world through the lens of they're doing that, they start to come into contact with an immense power, and they start to feel how you're creating everything. And as you start to feel that you're creating everything, you actually access power to create anything that you want.
Impressive. And I know we went into this in much more depth on my other podcast, but
yeah,
it's incredible when you actually sit quietly and listen to the words people use, because they will tell you their limiting beliefs. And for business owners, it's very clear. And I think what the business owner doesn't realize always is, if you're saying those words to your employees, as you kind of mentioned, then you're putting those beliefs into them. Like, this business will always struggle. Our clients are a pain. We'll never get ahead. Those are all the types of things that people say. And it's important to catch it. So how do we do that in the heat of the moment as a business owner?
For me, having another person that can reflect back to you the way that you're thinking based on the way that you're speaking, as you become aware of it, is the first step. So becoming aware of the things that you say with your mouth that are evidence of the way that you think with your head that are not useful for you. So whether that's through you listening to things and reading books or having somebody point it out, you got to become aware of how you are getting in your own way with your way of thinking. And this is like a super high point of leverage. I say in every business, the highest point of leverage for that bottom line is inside the head of the owner. How that owner thinks about themselves and their business is the highest point of leverage for change, for increase in revenue, profit, everything. And if you're not looking there, then you're missing out on the highest point of leverage. Everybody knows how a lever works. Move the fulcrum. And so, get in a conversation with a person who can see how you're thinking and being that's not effective, and elevate that, make that your most important task every single day. I know if I move the needle of my being by like a centimeter, then everybody on my team moves and everything else in the whole company moves. I've seen it over and over and over again, and with my clients as well. I'll give you an example of shifting some thinking. I had a client who has a community, and her community has people in it that are there trying to sell their stuff. And she keeps talking about them as vultures. And I said, you have a community of vultures. She's like, I know. And I said, and you're creating that. She's like, what do you mean? It's like, because you're seeing your community as a community of vultures. And as long as you're seeing them that way, then what you've got is a problem that you're at the effect of. You just start seeing them differently. See, these are awesome people that are here because they want to make money and they want to grow and they want to succeed. They're even trying to do it here. Wow. Look at that. Look how hungry they are. I got an email from somebody trying to sell me a ticket to an entrepreneur event in LA when I lived there. And I said, wow, thanks for trying, but I should be speaking at this event. So I got spam. They said, wow, thanks for telling us, but we're full now. I said, cool, well, look at my stuff because I think I should be speaking there. Thanks, you look good. Well, maybe for next time. And then some months went by and they said, hey, we had a speaker drop last minute. Can you come and speak? Jay Shetty's a headline. Can you speak just before him? Sure. And I spoke at the event and I created clients in that room. I do podcast interviews like these. And sometimes at the end of the podcaster says, how can I work with you? And it's not because I'm like doing some song and dance. It's because I show up in every conversation being that I have impact and I am a possibility. And that's just an idea that I live in, but that idea comes from choosing to have agency and to create whatever I want in every moment. And so if I have a community, if my client has a community of vultures, what's she going to get? She's going to get her arm bitten off. But it's just got a community of thousands of people here, and they are hungry and they want to succeed. And you see them that way. Suddenly your heart has a different feeling towards them. It's open. It sees possibility. And then you serve and you contribute in a way that actually doesn't get your arm bitten off, but feeds and creates something of value. So those are some examples of what I mean about like the way that we think about our community, our clients, our customers, our team. That's the highest point of leverage. How can I see them and be with them in such a way that everything goes up?
And that's the conversation I usually have with the business owner. You realize you're the roadblock.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you let go? And how do you find the best people to sit in the seats and let them do what they're best at? And truly an entrepreneur should be letting go, because that's kind of the definition. If you're not letting go, you're stuck in operations, and then you become the bottleneck more often than not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, letting go on the outside so that you can delegate, but also letting go on the inside so that you can lead instead of manage, right? Like allowing things to not go well in your heart, while it gives you the freedom to be creative and powerful and not accommodating things not working out on the outside.
And that's not easy. It takes practice.
It takes practice, yeah.
It does. It's definitely hard work. And having someone help you can kind of move the process along, and it can also show you things that you may not be aware of. In that they can reflect and see. We're all blind to something. Like we all have blind spots. And so having somebody help you see your blind spots so that you can improve them is a powerful gift.
Yeah, it is, for two reasons, I would say, Rocky, because on the first level, it's like now I can see that blind spot so I can deal with that thing that I couldn't see before. But there's a second order evolution and value that occurs if you continue to have somebody point out your blind spots, is that you develop the capacity to witness your own being and seeing at a level that you weren't able to before. And that's why we work with clients over a long period of time, because we're not just helping them to see what they're missing. We're helping them to see at a level that they couldn't see before. And we actually put most coaches out of business in the work that we do, because we help a person to develop the psychological capacity to witness themselves at such a high level that most coaches aren't going to be able to see stuff that they're doing or being that they can't see themselves. So they just take a minute to reflect. It's an evolution of consciousness. I mean, I'm a big fan of the work of Harvard psychologist Robert Kegan. He talks about the later levels of adult psychological development, where a person in older life, sometimes not all adults, but they become more object to their own experience, and they're able to witness their own thinking, and they're able to then develop what's called the self-authoring mind, where they're able to make choice about how they think because they can witness their thinking. In the latter level, typically in older years, is that you become what he calls self-transforming, where you actually become witness of your own authorship. And you become the author of authors, plural, and you're kind of comfortable being different selves in different contexts to different ends. But anyway, so for me, it's coaching and training and it's evolution, which is why we work people over a longer period of time.
And I think with age comes wisdom, right? When we're 18 and 22, we know it all.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then we slowly realize, wow, there's a whole lot I don't know. And we just kind of change our outlook in the way that we look at the world. And
yeah, I think it does. I think wisdom comes with age, but it's certainly, there's something else in the mix though, because I know people who are older that don't seem that much wiser. And I know people younger than me I was like, geez, if I was that wise at that age, where would I be now? You know? So there's something else. I don't know if it's curiosity or something like, that we're born with or what, but like maybe it's curiosity, but there's an interest and a valuing and a prioritization of learning that I think is important to help the development of wisdom. I think of wisdom as the ability to see more. Like I look to my mentors that are wise, and like, what is it that makes them wise in my eyes? They can see things that I can't see, which, directly what you're talking about. They can see my blind spots, but they can also see with a complexity. They also have an understanding. They speak of it so coherently, but I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I'm really drawn to people who can speak with groundedness and certainty about things that to me just don't seem to make any sense. I want to be around that until it does. And I don't know why I was thinking this the other day, but I was thinking, I stay with my own coaches until I come to the sessions and there's nothing that they're saying, or most of the stuff they're saying is like, that's not helping me to see something new. Like I couldn't have guessed that. As long as my coach or my mentor, when I meet with them, it's like, I leave that session scratching my head like, oh, you didn't see that coming. Then I know there's more work for us to do. They still have they have wisdom that I don't have. It's not just information. They have a perspective that is beyond. They can see, they're at a higher level, and they can see further to the horizon than I can. And those are the people that I'm drawn to work with, inspired by, and find value to be around.
Can they see further, or do they just have a different view than you do?
Well, I mean, it's a different view, whether we call it higher, which means they can see further, or just different. I mean, I guess it just, let's just call it different. That's fine. Let's not have to call it. Because it's not always higher. It could just be a different context, right? Like you could say somebody that's got experience with the profit first method, they're going to have a wider view in the context of managing cash than you do. But you take them into your business and in your industry, then it's going to be inverse, of course.
Very much so. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience today?
I'm just reflecting on that question, in the profit context. I mean, I'll say this. It's kind of fun to share with you because you're a guy that's happy to be a profit man. I love that. I think that there probably won't be anybody listening to this that feels this way either, but I think it's an important thing to contemplate in a world where there's a culture that's kind of like the word profit can be sometimes seen as a word that's not friendly, not nice, not kind. And I think that's unfortunate because the world is naturally abundant and naturally profitable. The house that we're living in is, the yard is got fruit trees everywhere. There's more fruit that you can eat. There's enough for us, for the wild chickens. It's just like profit is natural and abundant. And I personally believe that each and every one of us is an expression of the universe, the entire universe, and the universe is expanding. And so I am infinite expansion. I am constantly expanding. And so it's my birthright. It's my truth to expand and to profit as much as I possibly can. And any profit that I create and acquire, that doesn't get eaten while I'm alive, will fall back to the ground and become soil and nutrition for the next cycle of life. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure everybody here does too, but maybe that gives a perspective for people to feel even better about being all for profit in the world today.
It's funny because a lot of times when people hear the word profit first, they do have a negative connotation. And we look at them and say, you know what? You can't pay your employees if you're not profitable, right? You can't grow your business. You can't serve your clients. You can't continue to be strong and be that foundation. And unfortunately, many businesses go bankrupt over time. And when they do, they no longer can serve. And is that really what we want? It's not. We serve by being profitable. That's where we can give and donate and make the world a better place.
Yeah. I mean, it comes from perfectus, right, in Latin, which just means to grow, to move forward. And so that is where I connect it with being infinite expansion, being the expanding universe. To profit is to keep going, to keep growing. And I think pretty much everybody values growth. So totally agree. Love it.
If people would like to connect with you, learn more about your coaching, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Check out anywhere on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Is that all of them? Twitter. I don't really use Twitter too much, but I have the same handle everywhere. JP Morgan Jr. JP Morgan Jr. And that's also my website, jpmorganjr.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll make sure that is in the show notes.
Thank you, Rocky.
John is going to go much deeper into his expertise on my other podcast, Richer Soul. His episode is releasing in mid-January. We will talk about how to create freedom, love, and power to achieve the life you were meant to live. Having profit sure does help this happen to you, as you've heard from John. Find someone to help you see your blind spots and make better financial decisions. That's my desire for you. And while I will bring you as many experts as possible to choose from, I'm going to have on Amber, the person who helped him on the podcast, in a couple of months to share her story. In the meantime, enjoy the holidays. Let's make 2022 your best year ever. Remember, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer, because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.